Guys, it's Katie here from Bella Creativa. I'm sharing a little bit of a different project with you today. I've made these little faux Altoid tins for Halloween, and I used some paper clay to make the little pumpkins that you can see here, and also this little gravestone with the skull. So let's get making. So today for this project I'm going to do a little bit of mixed media, which is something that I haven't done in a while, and I do really enjoy it, but I don't know, it's messy and you have to get out paint, and then it gets, it takes ages to clean up and la-di-da. Anyway, I'm doing the old paint and the credit card scraping trick. One of the reasons why I wanted to do that is because I am going to put this paper through my Cricut when I finish to cut it out, and so I don't want the paint to be really thick because I don't want to stress the blade on my Cricut. So a good way of getting around that, I thought, was using the credit card scraping method. So I used a bit of brown paint on there, but the brown paint was dry and horrible, so I've gone here to my ever faithful Payne's Grey. I really like using Payne's Grey because it is a little bit more translucent than black, so I still can see some of the layers underneath. And right now this is looking like a hot mess, and I'm thinking, how am I going to make anything with this, and is it ever going to look anything like something that I would need or use for Halloween? Anyway, I'm going to resolve that by getting out a stencil, and let's see what happens here. I was really quite pleased with how this started to look a little bit more spooky. Look at that. It's amazing what you can do with a baby wipe and a stencil. Doesn't that look fabulous? I think it's fat. Yeah, look at that. I think as I'm doing it, I must think that it's looking great too, because I can't stop. So I'm just messing around a bit here with the stencils, and I think I'm pretty happy with that. No, I'm going to put some of this blue on here. Okay, so there's this little section in the middle that I wasn't happy with, so I'm just going over that, and then I'm going to take a bit more off and just make a little, oh, look at that. Okay, so I've set that aside to dry, and now I've got my little clay pieces here. So I made these the other day out of paper clay, and I did try to record it so I could show you what I was doing, but honestly, there were so many failed attempts that I gave up trying to record it in the end. So, yeah, I've made this out of paper clay. It's a little grave headstone, and it's got a little skull stuck to it, except the skull fell off, but that's okay. There it is, it fell off, because I fixed that up later with a bit of E6000. So I'm just giving my little headstone a coat with gesso, thinking that that will help the paint stick. And then I made this little stack of jack-o'-lanterns. These are so cute. They came out really well. I was super happy with them. So I'm just giving everything a little coat of gesso here before we move on to doing some colours. Okay, so my gesso has dried, and now I'm going to just do some motley effects on this gravestone. I'm not entirely sure what I'm looking for. I know I want it to look sort of granite grey, but I want it to have some depth and not just one grey colour, so a little bit of everything's going on here. Back to the old Payne's Grey. Gee, I love that. A little bit of gesso. Okay, now it's looking a little bit too flat, and I'm not happy with that, so back to the Payne's Grey. And I do a lot of this toing and froing until I figure out what it is that I want. And then at one stage, the paint actually starts to sort of peel off a little bit, and I think, oh no, that's not working at all. But then it kind of looked great. It looked a little, I don't know, it looked a little rough and aged, so I was really happy with that. So now I'm just sort of going backwards and forth, pouncing on a little bit of gesso, and then I pounce on a little bit of the Payne's Grey, and I just go backwards and forwards trying to build up a bit of depth of colour. I'd never know when to leave it alone, and you'll see this. I'm backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. But I guess that's part of the fun, really, isn't it? So I do this for a little while, and then I move on to the pumpkins. Okay, so I've managed to leave my little headstone alone, and we did miss a little section there where I painted a tiny little bird. You can see just left of the grey stone. I painted him black. I had a little spider there that I tried to paint, but you can see he lost all his legs, so the spider did not make it to the final cut. But I'm just going around all of the sections of the jack-o'-lanterns here and just filling in those areas that would be dark with the Payne's grey. So now my pumpkins look like a hot mess, and then I'm just doing the same thing there with the little skull. Oh, and we've moved on. Okay, so we're back to the pumpkins, and yay, finally some colour. So strangely, I've started with green. I think I wanted my orange to have an undertone of green. I just didn't want a flat orange. So, and I really like this green. So I'm just going around and covering up the white sections with the green, and now I've got some orange paint, which was aptly called Pumpkin Patch, so I'm just going around with that, and I'm really happy with how those little guys come out. They look so awesome when they're finished. So there's just a lot of painting with the orange here. So I did spend quite a bit of time painting my little pumpkins, and I'm really happy with them. So now I'm just painting my little skull. I'm just going backwards and forwards between the gesso and that kind of taupe colour, which is called something like Battleship Grey or something strange. And just gave it a little dry and just going backwards and forwards a little bit more, trying to get it to look not flat white and not completely taupe. So, you know, it's 1.5 centimetres around, and I spend an inordinate amount of time painting this little skull before I move on. Look at me, I can't leave that little guy alone. Okay, let it go, Katie. Put the skull down. No, look, just one more. Yeah. Finally. Okay, so moving on. What are we doing now? Okay, I've got some silver paint and some blue paint, and I'm just going backwards and forwards with those two colours on my little bird because he looked a little flat in colour. So I'm just putting a bit of blue on, putting a bit of grey on, and I also put a little bit of silver on, and now we're going back to a little bit more Payne's grey. You see what I mean about I can't leave it alone. This is a tiny, tiny little bird. Who spends this amount of time painting a tiny, tiny little bird? Me, apparently. Anyway, we're about to move on, and I'm going to start making my Altoid tin, which is, of course, not a real tin. It is it's a faux tin. I'm actually making it from cardstock. So I'm just going along and I'm just going to put it all together. As you can see, on the top of the screen, I have gone ahead and cut out all my pieces from that paper, and I'm pretty happy with how it came out. So I'm just going to put my little Altoid tin together now. If you're interested, I do have a video on how to put this together, a tutorial, and so I will try and remember to link it here. Otherwise, let's move on from here because this takes me a little bit. Okay, so I've made my little Altoid tin, and as you can see, I've cut out my mats and I've just run them through my embossing folder just to give the paper a little bit more texture. And now I'm just going over the embossed raised pieces with a bit of this silver paint, just, you know, because I can, just to give it a bit more interest, a bit of texture. So I'm going to do that for just the lid and the top of the lid, and this piece here is probably for the inside of the lid. And I also do the same for the little skinny little strips or mats that I'm going to put around the edge of the lid, but I'm not doing anything to the mats that are going inside or on the bottom half of the tin. So, and these are the tiny little hinges. I put those through the embossing machine as well. So I am decided that I was going to put a little bit of this silver paint around the edge of my tin, so I'm just going to do that. Oh, I've just done that. And so now I'm just putting my mats on my tin. I'm happy with the way they've come out. So once I've put the mats on the tin, then I've just taken them outside and I have given them a bit of a spray with some Mats acrylic sealer. It's just a no-name brand, but I have used Mod Podge before, which works really well, the spray, the matte spray. So that they are a little bit more protected, and I don't know, it just feels nice. Okay, so now that I've got all my mats on, I'm going to start putting my little headstone inside. So I'm pretty happy with the mats that I've done using the credit card and the stencil. I think it's worked out pretty well. It's probably a little brighter than I had in mind, but I'm going to put some of that black gauzy fabric in there anyway, so it's not so noticeable as being so bright. So I'm just fiddling around with my hot glue gun and trying to stick this little bit of that black gauzy fabric onto my headstone, and of course my hot glue gun won't work. The glue's not coming out. It's been really difficult. But there we go. I'm happy with it now, and I decided that it needed to have RIP on my headstone. And I hummed and hawed about how I was going to do that, and in the end I got out the old black art line marker and just wrote it on there, and I think it's okay. I did spray a little bit of water on it, as you can see here, and then tried to sort of wipe it off to make it look a bit more worn. Not sure that it really did anything, but I think it looks alright. And I've glued my skull and my little bird on there with the E6000, and so I think it's looking pretty good. So now I'm just using my hot glue gun and I'm trying to stick a little bit of that black gauzy fabric in the bottom of my tin. So before I stick in my little headstone, I do put the hinges on my tin while it's still empty, and then I glue in my little headstone. Look at that, that looks sensational. So yeah, I'm just, before I stick that little headstone in there, I'm going to stop and put my hinges on. So now my hinges are on, I'm just using my E6000 and gluing in my headstone. And I also made another box, which you can see there now, and that is going to be for my jack-o'-lanterns. So I just glue those in with a little bit of the E6000, and they are all done. So thanks very much for watching today, guys. This is a bit of a different video for me, but I appreciate you stopping by and having a look at my little shadow boxes. Bye for now. Bye.